Hello, it's Devin over here. I am part of your introduction of firearms. Today we're going to be doing some firearms cleaning and going over some cycle operation stuff. So, part one of this guy, obviously, I've got my 1911 that you got introduced to last week. So, just going to verify there's no ammo in, nothing in the chamber. We're all the way clear, and let this guy go forward. So, as far as the actual cycle of operations of a 1911 pistol, very similar to a lot of other firearms that are out there. We're going to start with feeding. So feeding, normally you'd have a magazine that has your ammunition into it. Ammunition will actually, as I release the slide, you'll see how it works, but there's a little conical feed ramp that you can kind of see right there. And so the bullet's going to be stripped from the magazine by the breech face of the pistol, and that's going to strip the bullet off of the magazine and insert it in there. So that's how feeding starts to happen. So feeding, obviously, this is going to start to come forward, and it'll start pushing the round into the chamber. Okay, of course, once this comes a little bit closer to full, that'll be the actual chambering of the round. So that's going to chamber the round into the firearm. And then you can kind of see how the bolt falls down and out of those locking lugs, which we'll see here in a second. That is going to actually be the locking piece of this. So obviously that's, feeding, chambering, locking, all happens with the forward motion of the slide. And then the actual firing component, with this particular pistol, the safety has to be down, the grip safety has to be depressed, and then of course I'm going to depress the trigger, and the trigger is going to fall forward and strike on the hammer. The hammer is going to fall forward, hitting the firing pin, which will engage into the primer. So you can see when I pull the trigger, it obviously goes clunk like so. That would be the engagement of that. Of course, the primer would ignite the charge inside of the cartridge. Bullet would go down range, and then the gun would start to cycle back. And so the very first thing that happens, of course, is as the gun and the pressure start to normalize, the gun will start to come back. Came in. It's harder to do with gloves on. You see how that kind of just dropped down a little bit right there? That little drop right there is it unlocking outside of its lugs. Of course, as it's unlocking, it's going to have the extractor, which you can see along the side of the pistol here, and it creates this little claw, which you can kind of see right there. It's going to be latched onto the rim of the cartridge, and it's going to strip that cartridge out of the chamber, which is going to extract it. So first it drops out of place and unlocks that the extractor latched onto it is going to pull it out. And then if you look really closely, it's kind of tough to see because it's so dark. We'll see it a little bit more. There's a little bar right here, and that's the ejector. So as it comes back, that ejector hits the rear end of the cartridge and flicks that cartridge out of the chamber. And of course, you'll notice that as this thing is cycling back, the hammer, you can see how it is down right now. As this comes back, you'll see how it cocks it, how it pushes it back. So anyways, that's our basic cycle operations of this firearm. So let's get this gun into a couple different pieces here. First things first, we're going to do the most stubborn part about 1911. Get this little piece off the slide. Come in. Wiggle, wiggle. There we go. This one is stubborn. Yeah. Okay. Barrel bushing is out. I don't have, in your guys' manual it requires an Allen wrench. Maybe it's because this pistol is old, it doesn't have that. Let that back and get the takedown pin out. Let's see if I make the same mistake I made a bunch of times last week. Okay, nope, good, perfect. Alright, so we're apart. We are at least basically field stripped right now. Get this out of the way. We're going to get some of these pieces here in a moment. Yes, perfect. Alright, as far as the individual pieces and where they fall into the feeding, should have brought a magazine. All my magazines are loaded. I didn't think to do that. Magazine is one of the most important pieces for feeding because obviously it has it in there. Now, technically speaking, a gun can feed without the use of a magazine, or at least this one in particular can. But anyways, magazine inserted through the back. Magazine would be sitting on the top. You'd have the actual bullets in it. And that you'll see how this thing has a slight ramp right here. Not all 1911s have that, but this particular one does. And so the feeding is going to be engaged first by the back of the slide. As the slide starts to come across the top of the magazine, it's going to strip a round, and that round is going to get stuck inside here with the extractor. That round is going to feed into these little ramps here into the actual chamber, and of course as this slide comes forward, the breech face is going to lock into this piece here, kind of lock into this. This will actually have a true lock here in a second, but it's going to push into this piece right there and push that chamber in, or push that bullet into the chamber that's going to be chambering. The locking is the cool part about a 1911. These two pieces right here, these are your locking lugs, and they fall into these little lugs right here in the slide. And so those all kind of connect together and lock it. Firing. So of course we already kind of went over the hammer, the trigger and stuff like that nature. I'm not going to do it because this is a scandium alloy lower and this is a steel hammer still. So if I pull the trigger, she's going to smack into it. But the hammer falls forward whenever I pull the trigger and all the safeties have been released. And it hits on the very back here. You can see the little firing pin piece there. I don't have enough of a detent, but you can kind of see the firing pin moving there. Of course, when the hammer hits it with much more force, it's going to actually come forward and hit and protrude from that enough to engage the primer. Okay, so once that hits and smacks the primer, of course, that's when the actual firing of the bullet goes. And then unlocking, the pressures will, right now that pressure of the bullet going out is creating backwards pressure as the pressure leaves. While these are under a lot of pressure, they are locked in. As that bullet leaves, this pressure, as it reduces, will allow this to unlock out of it and drop out of the way on this little link. And that'll be the unlocking piece of it. So this will drop down and this will go back. This actually technically plays a little bit of a role in the unlocking because this is the part that so your takedown pin hides inside this little link right here. And so this is what allows that little bit of movement for the unlocking of the gun. Okay, so let's see here. Unlocking. Extracting. The extracting is this little claw on the inside here. That's again going to pull and yank it out. Ejecting, that's this little bar right here. That's going to flick the bullet out the side. And then cocking again as the bottom of the slide, you can kind of see here how it's got a little bit of a ramp. It's sliding backwards. It's going to drop this hammer and drop that hammer out of the way. Excellent. As far as cleaning this gun, it's relatively simple. I don't have a whole lot of dirtiness going on this gun. Let me see if I can pick up. There's a little bit of a smudge there. Okay, so we'll use that, right? So the initial pieces of it are really just lots of wiping down and brushing. This part right here and your breech face are the two most dirty parts. Let's go ahead and we'll do a little bit of scrubbing and cleaning. I'm going to put just a little drop on there. I have my CLP, and that's just enough to get the brush going. We're going to kind of scrub those little pieces. Scrub the spots that have a little bit of a collection of it going on. And so that's where my gun gets the most dirty, is right around the edges of the barrel. And the breech face, this gun's been in storage for a little while, so not a big deal. So get those kind of cleaned up. Corresponding lugs inside here. Again, same kind of concept. You can use the little pieces of the brush and come in back here to really dig into them and kind of clean them out. And same thing with inside your rails. So I'm just going to kind of brush everything. It'll get a little bit of lube from the brush on it. It's already kind of lubed. Get all the dust off. Basically what I'm doing here is these rails. This is any of your wear spots. This is where your slide rides back and forth. You can see how it used to be black and it's all not anymore. So I'm going to go through all that stuff. Get your feed ramps on your way up and just basically kind of go through the slide assembly like that. These pieces really just require a wipe down. They don't really get too terribly dirty. Pull your ring off. Yeah, there's almost no dirt on this thing. Just really wipe down. It's usually pretty loose if there is any components. So again, kind of just wiping stuff, getting a little bit of lube on some of these components, and a little bit in there. So there we go. I don't know if you saw it the first time. Focus. So now you can see it. Now it's nice and clean. That'll get all that fun stuff. Now, as far as the actual barrel, .45 cal brush. You can use a couple different components. So you do have the little pull rod that comes in your guys' cleaning kit that you send. If you're going to use this, the easiest way, there's a little bar. You got this little black piece like so. I go from the same direction that a bullet goes, right? These are brass tips, so they shouldn't damage anything on the rifling or anything like that nature. Get it to kind of engage. Once it's engaged, use this little black piece right here to grab onto it. And sometimes you can do it without it. And then you just give it a good tug, straight through. Easy peasy. Do that a couple of times to loosen up any of the carbon that may be lodged in the barrel. Bam. Let's just call it done there. Easy peasy. And then we can run ourselves. Okay, I know there was another one of these things hiding somewhere. Good news. Hopefully I can edit most of this out. There it is. Came in. Yeah, there was a little bit of dirt on that. Look at that. We got some removed. And then now I can kind of inspect in there, nice and glossy. There's not too much buildup left in there. Chamber's nice and clean. All right, perfect. Cool. Now we can reassemble. And so that should be record the proper cleaning procedure in photographic or video form. Blah, 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 blah. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Once you've kind of gone through everything, you can re-lubricate. Lubrication is a fairly simple thing. A couple of dots, usually on any of the spots that wear quite a bit. So along your slide rails, a little bit on the locking lugs, both on the slide and on the barrel. And those are really the main pieces. I usually keep this a little bit lubricated, and I mean just a little bit lubricated. And actually you could probably see it, like basically in a nutshell, if you touch it with a dry hand and you can see a little fingerprint on it, that means it's got just a little bit of lubrication on it. And is plenty. So anyways, that's my 13-minute video. We've got to cut that down, so hopefully I can get good and creative with editing.